British divided the Indian subcontinent based on religious identity. The All India Muslim League carved out Pakistan, and the Indian National Congress secured India. Still, the Shiromani Akali Dal was left empty-handed as the British made their exit in 1947. Despite the Sikh community's unwavering collaboration with the colonial rulers, the Sikhs' aspirations for an independent state and the inclusion of additional territories were ruthlessly crushed in the violent storm of partition. By choosing to merge with India, the Akali leadership shackled their community to a colossal Hindu majority, where they made up a mere 1%. Historians have wrestled with the mystery of this crushing political defeat. Sher Muhammad Grewal argues that the Sikhs' downfall was due to their naivety, as they failed to grasp the complex and treacherous nature of Punjab's political chessboard. Sangat Singh lays the blame squarely on the shoulders of incompetent Akali leadership. At the same time, Sardar Hukam Singh insists that the Akalis had no real alternatives, forcing them to side with India as the lesser of two evils. However, these perspectives only scratch the surface of a much deeper and more tangled reality. The truth is that a combination of powerful forces conspired against Sikh political ambitions, sealing their fate. This video delves into the critical factors that drove the Akali leaders to reject Pakistan and throw their lot in with India, forever altering the destiny of the Sikh community. Both Muslims and Sikhs had once ruled Punjab, making them equally confident in claiming their political inheritance when the British prepared to withdraw from India. While Punjab was a stronghold for Muslims due to its demographic dominance, it held an even deeper significance for the Sikhs, as it was the sacred birthplace of their gurus. For Muslims, Islam had originated in Arabia, and Punjab had welcomed many Muslim settlers from other lands. In contrast, Sikhism was a homegrown faith, and its followers were deeply rooted in the region, reinforcing their belief that Punjab was their rightful homeland. Historically, Hindus had also ruled Punjab at different times, but after 1849, the British became the new masters after toppling Sikh rule. Their governance introduced political reforms that prioritized majority rule, causing anxiety among religious minorities. Punjab's demographic complexity only deepened under British rule, but Sikhs found themselves particularly vulnerable due to their scattered presence across the region. Unlike Muslims or Hindus, Sikhs did not hold a majority in any district, further weakening their political position. Although the British had shown them favoritism, their efforts to negotiate constitutional settlements with major national parties left the Sikhs at a disadvantage, as they were largely confined to Punjab. Over time, Sikhs and Muslims developed a rivalry, shaped by historical and religious factors that influenced British Punjab's political landscape. The influence of Muslim saints played a crucial role in the region, as they spread Islamic teachings based on equality, brotherhood, and simplicity, attracting a significant number of converts, especially among the oppressed and marginalized Hindus. However, the eventual rise of Muslim orthodoxy and extremism led to internal fractures within Muslim rule in India. This created a religious void, particularly in Punjab, which Guru Nanak Dev, 1469 to 1539, sought to fill by blending elements of Hinduism and Islam into Sikhism. His teachings drew many converts, mainly from Hindu communities, but also a small number of Muslims. Sikhism emerged during the era of Muslim rule, with Guru Nanak witnessing the reigns of Ibrahim Lodi and Babur. The relationship between Sikh gurus and Muslim rulers was expected to be that of subjects and sovereigns, yet the gurus chose to live independently, refusing to submit to political authority. This assertion of personal freedom often led to conflict, as rulers saw their political involvement as a threat. Consequently, Sikh gurus were frequently summoned, pressured, imprisoned, tortured, and even executed. While these actions were politically motivated, Sikhs perceived them as direct attacks on their religious leaders, deepening animosity between the two communities. The execution of Sikh gurus became a lasting wound that prevented Muslim-Sikh relations from ever truly mending. Though they coexisted in Punjab, their religious legacies kept them divided, with each group treating the other as a rival. This cycle of hostility continued under both Sikh and Muslim rulers until the British arrived in Punjab. Following the Anglo-Sikh Wars in 1846 and 1849, the British took control, yet surprisingly, a period of cooperation emerged between Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus. All three communities proved loyal to the British and became pillars of colonial rule. British reforms in education, politics, economy, agriculture, and publishing sparked a new sense of communal empowerment, which later evolved into nationalist consciousness. As people sought greater rights and representation, competition between religious groups intensified, leading to deepening communalism. The two world wars, 1914 to 1919 and 1939 to 1945, severely weakened British colonial power, fueling nationalist movements across India. Local communities, including the Sikhs, had sacrificed their lives on the battlefield, expecting fair treatment in return. While Sikhs were favoured by the British in military and administrative matters, they suffered politically. Their demands were repeatedly dismissed, while Hindus and Muslims successfully secured major concessions and political advantages. A multitude of factors contributed to this disastrous outcome for the Sikhs, leaving them sidelined in the fight for political supremacy in British India. During British rule, the way they controlled Punjab was by relying on influential local families. The rural elite, eager to maintain their status, aligned themselves with the British, who rewarded them with land and privileges. This made these landlords even more powerful among the locals. Meanwhile, common people didn't have voting rights, which meant they couldn't form organizations to push for their interests. In the beginning, Sikh leadership mostly came from this wealthy landowning class, but despite their efforts, they weren't very effective in advancing Sikh interests. The Khalsa National Party, which had British backing, enjoyed political advantages as part of the government. Meanwhile, a different kind of Sikh leadership started emerging from the lower middle class, one that was more aggressive but lacked political strategy. The Akalis, for instance, opposed almost everyone. The British, the Congress, the Muslim League, the Unionist Party, and even other Sikhs who weren't on their side. However, at different times, they also worked with some of these same groups, like the Muslim League in the Northwest Frontier Province, the Unionist Party in Punjab, and even the British and Congress. Leadership from wealthy families can be useful, especially when there's no strong grassroots leadership yet. In contrast, leadership from the lower classes takes time to break free from feelings of inferiority and past oppression. Many of the Sikh leaders from this background struggled with these challenges. They sometimes took an aggressive stance, but lost their momentum when British officials, like Major Short and Sir Penderell Moon, intervened. When dealing with Congress, Sikh leaders often made compromises on political issues. The Sikh aristocrats dominated politics, and the Akalis saw them as their main rivals, portraying them negatively to the Sikh community. However, completely ignoring these traditional politicians wasn't a smart move because they had connections with both Muslim leaders and the British, which could have helped build alliances. The Akalis were popular at the grassroots level, which gave them political influence, but sidelining experienced politicians weakened their movement. Another major issue was control over Gurdwara funds. Some Akali leaders became more focused on gaining financial control rather than serving the community. They even accepted money from Hindu leaders and were willing to make compromises for financial gain. This obsession with wealth hurt their movement. Gurmit Singh even argued that Akali leaders were selfish, always looking for personal benefits rather than working selflessly for the Sikh cause. There were also violent clashes among different Sikh factions. For example, during a 1941 by-election in Batala, Akalis and supporters of Mohinder Singh fought with bamboo sticks and swords, leaving some injured. Similarly, police records show that Akalis and Nihangs fought over land at Nankana Sahib. The Akalis opposed the Nihangs when they saw them as a threat to their control over Gurdwara administration, but later supported them when it suited their interests. This kind of opportunistic politics weakened the Sikh movement. Sikh leaders often presented themselves as nationalists, but their actual political stance was communal. They were unsure about their place in both provincial and national politics. In 1973, Sardar Hukam Singh admitted that Sikhs had always tried to balance their national outlook with their need to protect Sikh interests. But at the same time, they kept denying that their politics were communal. If they had embraced their communal identity earlier, they might have found better solutions to their issues. H.V. Hodson described how Sikhs and Muslims had conflicted for over 250 years, first for survival and later for control of Punjab. Instead of insisting they were nationalists, Sikh leaders could have openly positioned themselves as a communal party. Even Gandhi advised Master Tara Singh that their political struggle was communal and their violent approach didn't align with Congress's strategy. But instead of taking this as constructive advice, Sikhs saw it as an insult and ignored it. Sikhism originally drew most of its followers from Hinduism, and that historical connection continued to shape Sikh political thinking. Even though the Congress repeatedly betrayed the Sikhs on important issues, Sikh leaders never tried to break free from Hindu influence. One major example was the Ravi Pledge of 1929, where the Congress promised that no constitutional decisions would be made without Sikh approval. But in reality, they never kept this promise. The Congress would go ahead and negotiate with the British and the All India Muslim League without even consulting the Sikhs. Despite this, the Akalis and the Central Akali Dal kept encouraging their supporters to join the Congress in large numbers, hoping to strengthen their influence from within. But when it mattered, the Congress consistently sidelined the Sikhs. Even then, Akali leaders never dared to break away and follow their independent political path. In the long run, their dependence on the Congress turned out to be harmful to the Sikh community's future. The Akali leaders heavily relied on religion and infused violence into their political strategies. They used emotional appeals to stir up the masses, pushing them toward aggressive political action. Master Tara Singh, in a surge of emotionalism, went so far as to invoke Guru Gobind Singh, controversially stating during the communal award agitation that if the Guru did not help them achieve victory, then he was not their savior. Of course, he could not actually abandon Sikhism as he had implied, so it was clearly a rhetorical move meant to provoke strong emotions among his followers. However, such statements were not fitting for a leader who held the religious trust of his community. Sikh leaders frequently referenced the Khalsa and Guru Gobind Singh's teachings, portraying him as the force that had weakened Muslim rule in India. Their anti-Muslim stance aligned them with the Hindu Mahasabha in Punjab, but this was a strategic mistake. Instead of allowing religious rivalries to dominate their politics, they should have focused on negotiations and discussions to secure the best possible outcome for the Sikh community. Yet, rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue, they presented exaggerated concerns to British officials, especially Punjab's governor, Evan Jenkins, claiming that the Muslim League aimed to wipe out the Sikhs and Sikhism entirely. One of the most infamous incidents associated with Master Tara Singh was the claim that he had brandished a kirpan, sword, on the stairs of the Punjab Assembly in defiance of the Pakistan plan. However, in a later conversation with Dr. Bhai Harbans Lal, he denied this ever happened. Instead, he admitted that some of his own supporters had exaggerated the story to glorify Akali's courage and bolster opposition to the creation of Pakistan. In his own words, the story had been made up by politicians with vested interests to incite the public and was picked up by over-enthusiastic news reporters. Even some of my Akali followers spread the story, thinking it would help our cause against Pakistan. At the time, violence became the defining theme of Sikh politics, ultimately overshadowing the legitimacy of their demands and weakening their position. Pertinently, the Sikhs made a critical mistake by relying too much on British officials, particularly the Governor of Punjab and the Viceroy, in the final years of British rule. Despite repeated advice to engage in negotiations with the Muslim League and the Congress, who were the real power players in India's future, the Sikh leadership kept appealing to British authorities, hoping they would do something for the Sikhs. In reality, neither the League nor the Congress could afford to ignore the Sikhs, given their influence in Punjab. However, instead of actively bargaining with these parties, the Sikh leaders placed their hopes on the goodwill of the British. This was especially evident in their repeated pleas to Lord Mountbatten, who merely passed their requests to Jawaharlal Nehru, only for Nehru to reject them outright. By failing to engage with the actual decision-makers and continuing to depend on a fading colonial power, the Sikhs missed crucial opportunities to secure a stronger political position. As a result, they found themselves sidelined and forced to endure the devastating consequences of partition. Similarly, there were internal divisions among the Sikhs, and it impacted their political standing during the last decades of British rule. The Akali Dal, the main Sikh political party, alienated various Sikh factions, including aristocrats, communists, lower caste Sikhs, and Congress-supporting Sikhs, instead of uniting them. This weakened the Sikh political movement. The Akali Dal itself suffered from factionalism, with groups like the Giani Kartar Singh and Nagoke factions competing for influence. Many Sikhs held dual memberships in different parties, creating a lack of discipline and divided loyalties. Some argue that the Sikh masses never fully supported the Akali Dal, leading to its failure. However, others believe that the Akali leadership was responsible for not securing enough seats in the 1946 Punjab elections. The masses had always responded enthusiastically to Akali calls for action and sacrifices, but the leadership's inconsistent stance, sometimes siding with Congress, sometimes seeking British support, confused the community. Master Tara Singh, the most prominent Sikh leader of the time, made strategic mistakes. He opposed the British but relied on their advice. He promoted Sikh unity but failed to keep all factions together. His leadership style lacked the flexibility needed to navigate the rapidly changing political landscape. Critics also point out that his background as a school headmaster did not prepare him for high-level politics. Unlike other major politicians of the time, he lacked legal training or influential family connections, which made it harder for him to negotiate effectively. Demographically, the Sikhs were at a disadvantage since they were not a majority in any district of Punjab. This made it difficult to demand a separate Sikh state or significant political autonomy. The Sikh leadership aligned with Congress, but was later sidelined when Congress opposed Sikh demands for an independent territory. Despite opportunities for dialogue with the Muslim League, the Sikhs remained hostile toward them, further limiting their political options. Pertinently, the position of the governor of Punjab had a significant influence on the province's affairs under British rule. The governor was meant to carry out their duties with integrity and uphold the democratic system, protecting the minorities in Punjab. Early on, the British used the office to support the pro-government Unionists, as they needed a peaceful Punjab for their army and other interests. However, after the 1937 elections, when Indian political parties became more involved in regional politics, the governor's approach remained outdated, and this contributed to the weakening of communal harmony. The Sikhs trusted Governor Evan Jenkins, but he didn't deliver for them. He used his relationship with Sikh leaders to gather information, which he then passed on to the Viceroy. Jenkins could have helped ease tensions between Sikhs and Muslims by encouraging the Sikhs to join the League ministry after the 1945 elections. This could have restored some communal peace and perhaps even maintained territorial unity. Instead, he resisted the League ministry and supported undemocratic policies, which eventually led to the partition of the Punjab. The Akali leadership made a mistake by placing too much trust in the British, especially in Jenkins and Mountbatten. While it was their right to share their grievances with the British, relying solely on them was not a wise strategy. The partition plan had already been agreed upon by all the major parties, yet the Sikhs kept pushing for special treatment from the British, which ultimately didn't help their cause. Jenkins' role became more like that of a messenger, simply relaying reports to the Viceroy instead of taking decisive action to address the rising tensions in the province. On July 30, 1947, Jenkins reported on a Sikh protest at Nankana Sahib, but he failed to take action or prevent further violence. His focus remained on the transfer of power rather than on restoring peace. Even though Jenkins had a good relationship with the Sikhs, he failed to persuade them to avoid violent tactics. In the end, he couldn't use his influence effectively, and his inaction contributed to the worsening situation in Punjab. After the 1946 elections, the principle of majority rule, which is key to democracy, was completely disregarded by the anti-League forces, including the governor and the Congress. Despite the League being the largest party in the Punjab Legislative Assembly, the Congress, Unionists, Sikhs, and other non-Muslims joined forces to form a coalition government under Khizr Hayat Tiwana, even though the League should have had the first chance to form a government. This decision ignored the will of the Muslim majority and created political tension. The Sikhs made a big mistake by not supporting the League, which would have secured their share in the political process. As the British were preparing to leave, the Sikhs faced three main choices: creating their state, Khalistan, joining Pakistan, or joining India. The first option lacked a solid foundation due to the scattered Sikh population and internal divisions. Joining Pakistan was unappealing due to past communal violence, and joining India seemed like a betrayal since the Sikhs had long been marginalized. Despite these options, the Sikh leadership failed to take decisive action and instead became too reliant on the Congress, who had repeatedly let them down. The Punjab lacked strong leadership, which contributed to the chaos during such a critical time in history. The Sikh leadership was also overwhelmed by powerful figures like Jinnah, Gandhi, and Nehru. While the League had the legitimate right to lead after their electoral victory, the Sikhs didn't recognize this, focusing instead on their grievances and conflicts with the League and others. In conclusion, the Sikhs made a critical error by siding with Congress and opting for a united India, where they were a tiny minority. Their disunity, weak leadership, and failure to assess the political landscape led to their eventual regret, as predicted by Jinnah. The Sikhs' decision to join India in 1947, despite the League's offers, resulted in them losing out on any significant political concessions, ultimately leading to the struggles they faced post-partition.